What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Every Week We Follow. So we have a massively special guest with us here today. For anyone that doesn't know, if you've lived under a rock as some kind of Villa fan, this is the legend that is Peter Withe. We are both pretty giddy with excitement here. Gary's speechless. He's completely starstruck.
I am starstruck, Peter. I think for me, you are the reason I became a Villa fan. So I'm 46 this year, and when I was from 0 to 7, I was a Liverpool fan because I loved John Barnes. I was left-footed myself when I played, and I had a little bit of an obsession. But my mum got remarried to a massive Villa fan who basically made me sit and watch that European Cup final probably about 1 million times. So, yeah, you're the reason I'm a Villa fan 40 years later. So I've just got a massive respect for you and that team and what they did. And without that, we wouldn't be doing this, and we wouldn't be, a season ticket holder for the last 20 odd years or whatever. It's just you are the man, you are the legend, the man, the Withe, the legend. So yeah, I'm absolutely giddy. So yeah, let's get cracking.
Okay.
But thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us. First off, how are you doing? How are things in Australia?
I'm good. We're going into our winter here in Australia, so the evenings are a bit cold. It was the coldest morning for 2 years here it was 3.5 degrees here this morning. But it's the weather's our sort of winters similar to the summer of the UK, although it's not that way inclined at the moment because you're having heat waves at the moment.
Yeah, it's like 30 degrees at the moment, Pete. I'm absolutely sweating.
So what?
Everything's going all right. I've got a big back garden, which is a golf course.
Yeah,
that's not a bad garden.
Yeah, that's not a bad garden, isn't it?
And I don't have to cut the grass.
Yeah.
That's a win-win situation all round, mate.
Living the dream.
Okay, Peter. So for me, right, I'd love to go back to the beginning when you joined Villa in 1980, I believe.
Correct.
I think it was. Yes. And so, like, just 2 seasons later, you're scoring the goal in the European Cup final. Did you ever imagine when you signed that was the path that was going to go when you signed when you first came across?
Yes.
Yes.
The reason being was that I left Nottingham Forest and went to Newcastle on the understanding that I was going to try and do the same thing as what happened with Forest, is go to a second division team, get promotion, and then go on to success again. And that was my goal. And I'd said to Bill McGarry, who was the manager at the time, I said, look, I'll give it 2 years for us to get up. And he had great ambitions about, signing like myself and other players. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. And I said to him, the reason why I came here was to win trophies like I did at Nottingham Forest. So my ambition was to leave Newcastle and to join a club that I felt was going to be successful and I was going to win things. So that was sort of my goal, as it were. Having spoken to 3 clubs, speaking to my hometown team that I supported as a lad, Everton. So, your heart wants to join them, but your mind is sort of telling you they haven't got a cat and mouse chance of winning anything. Because I was always a little bit trying to be clued up with regards to the way the team went the season before. And I spoke to Leeds United, and that was a bit of a similar thing. I didn't think they were going to be successful. I spoke to my hometown team, which my dad wanted to come with me for the interview. So I said, unfortunately, Dad, you can't. I'll meet you afterwards and tell you what happened. So in the end, speaking to Gordon Lee, who was the manager of Everton at the time, he sort of said to me, well, he was selling like 6 players. So I'm thinking to myself, he's selling 6 players. Who is he going to get in? if he's selling 6 of the best players.
Yeah.
And he said I was number one priority, but he didn't seem to have that much with regards to who else he was going to sign. So my back burner was telling me I can't see them being successful in the next 2 or 3 years. So then I went to speak to Ron Saunders, who just had it down to pat, really, just said, we've got a chance of winning the title if you being the final jigsaw in the puzzle. If you sign for us, we've got a great opportunity to win the championship. Now, I'd already seen what they did the year before.
Yeah.
And I've seen that they had an awful start to the season, but got better and stronger as it went along. Unfortunately, lost to West Ham in the cup, which was a bit of a glitch. Excuse me. But I'd seen the way that they'd ended the season, and I thought, you know what? And I looked through all the players that they had, and I just thought to myself, you know what? Probably got a great chance of doing things here at this football club. So, as I said, my heart wanted to join Everton, but my mind, and we sat down, Kathy and I sat down, because she's been with me through all the roads, all the highs, all the lows. And, she was the same. She's from Liverpool. She wasn't Everton supporter, but she was from Liverpool.
Oh, Everton and Liverpool.
Yeah, but that was difficult.
So, she wasn't really a football fan, really. But anyway.
Sounds like my wife. But love of a good woman, Peter, needed.
Yeah. So we sat down, we analysed it, we put the highs and the lows and the pluses and the minuses. And then in the end, we come to the decision that the best road for us as a couple and me as a player was to join, Aston Villa. And as I say, it went on for probably the end of the season until I signed, which was in the May. I signed in the May. And the other thing was Ron Saunders, he doesn't mess around. So, Everton wanted to negotiate a new fee.
Of course.
And do things like that. Whereas Ron Saunders just said, this is what I'm going to pay. And there's no sort of going back on it. He had a good rapport with, with Bill McGarry.
Yeah.
And they're sort of from the old school. So in the end, it come down to signing for Aston Villa.
Fantastic.
Wow. So the other question, so leading on for that. Go on, James.
I've got one quick question that kind of like it's slightly linked. It's from the father-in-law. So his question was the Forest of 77 team or the Villa team. Obviously, we were on a Villa podcast, so no bias. But which was better? He wanted to hear your thoughts.
Well, when I joined, I went from the first division playing for Birmingham and then signed for Nottingham Forest. And funnily enough, I spoke to Howard Kendall, and Howard Kendall said to me, if this club don't want you, go and speak to this manager, because this manager wins things. And indicating about Brian Clough, of course. So when I went there, he was building a new side, basically. And I was, again, a link in that side that he was building. So we had a good side with regards to getting promotion. But we only got in by the skin of our teeth in third place. But, of course, he then added to that role with regards to the players. And everyone always thought that, they've just come up and they scraped in by the skin of the teeth. They'll be happy with a mid-table if they get in the mid-table. But, of course, we had a manager who had been successful in the past and won the championship with a provincial team in Derby County. So we were sort of firing on all cylinders, as it were. Started the season very well. And then all of a sudden we were playing Ipswich Town, and a certain Mick Mills said that they might be doing well at the moment, but they haven't come up against a good side yet. So Mr. Clough pinned that up onto the wall and told all the players to read it and listen to me. So, of course, we went out and beat them 4-0. Yours truly scored all 4 goals on the occasion.
Amen to that.
So I said to Brian Clough about, I've scored 4 goals. Normally you get it for 3 goals. Is there any get the match ball? And he went, "Hey, young man, when you learn to play with it, I'll get you the ball."
Amazing. I was going to ask if there was any interesting Cloughy stories. Have you got any really interesting Cloughy stories that you might not have told before?
Well, that was it. Well, to be perfectly honest, when I said to him about the ball, and he said that, all credit to him, he picked the ball up and he went into their dressing room. The first person he went up to was Mick Mills, and he said, "Would you like to sign this ball for someone who scored 4 goals today?" So that was a bit of. So he went round and he got the autographs of every single player.
Oh wow!
He brought it in our dressing room, and we all signed as well. So yeah, it was one of them occasions. The interesting fact is with regards to Brian. When I was driving up from Birmingham to Nottingham in my Angular, it wasn't a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or anything like that. So
how times have changed.
And as I was driving up, I was thinking to myself, things are going through my mind about meeting Brian Clough for the first time. So, of course, I get up there. Peter Taylor comes running in the car park telling me that he'd been chasing me for years. He tried to sign me at Brighton when I was at the Portland Timbers. But they were in the 3rd division then. So he come into the car park. "Oh, come in," we went into the boardroom, met the chairman, sat down, sat there 15 minutes thinking, like, where's this Brian Clough? So I was like going through my head thinking, he's not even here. And all of a sudden the door opens. He comes in with this green top that he always wore.
Yeah.
Shorts. And he put this squash racket in front of me and he said, "Hey, young man, can you play?" I went, "No." So he looked at Peter Taylor and he went, "Hey, I thought you told me he could play." And I was like, looking. So he looks at me again. He said, "Can you play?" And I said, "I've never played squash in my life. I can't."
Oh, brilliant.
So he said to me then, he said, "No, I don't mean squash, I mean football." I said, "Oh, yeah, I can play that. I'm all right."
What a conversation. Oh, God. They just don't make them like Brian Clough anymore, do they? Unfortunately. That's the old but gold. Yeah. I think my next question, Pete, because just going back to the Villa on that, like in that 80-81 season when we won the league, like we were arguably probably the most underrated side in English football at the time, because the expectation probably wasn't that we were going to win the league and go on and win the European Cup. So what made that team so special? Because there was only, 13, 14 players potentially. Like, what made it so special?
That really. I think with regards to the players that we used, which was 14 players, we had a good understanding. We had what Ron Saunders always tried to build, and what Brian Clough built as well, was a spine of the side. So the goalkeeper, the centre half, the centre midfield, and the striker. So if you've got that all correct and in place, you've got a great chance of winning things. And we had Jimmy Rimmer in goal. We had Ken McNaught and Alan Evans in centre. We had Dennis Mortimer, and we had myself up front. So we had the spine of the side. And the other thing that we had a lot of players in the team who all scored goals.
Yeah.
So, Gary and myself scored goals. Tony Morley scored goals, and we had a midfield who scored goals. So we had a lot of players who wasn't reliant on one or two players.
Yes.
We had a lot of players who could score goals. And I think, you know, when I joined, funnily enough, when Ron was selling it to me, he sold it with regards to Brian Little. So he said to me at the time, he said, I've got a little striker who's a pain in the backside at times, but he'll score goals and you'll score goals and you'll help one another to make goals. But unfortunately, Brian, through his injuries, I only played one game, and that was his testimonial game.
Yeah.
And that was the only time I played with Brian. So all of a sudden, thrust into the limelight was this young, up-and-coming striker called Gary Shaw.
Yeah.
And we just seemed to hit it off, and I took him, I'd like to think, I took him under my wing to sort of protect him and also to keep his feet on the ground, because I know what it's like. You can run away with yourself. But we ended up forming this dynamic duo who basically, we scored goals, and that helped.
Yeah, do you know what? I think for me, that's something we've lacked since your time. Like that kind of combination, that's really gone on and could be able to take us to that level. Do you know what I mean? Consistently, like that for that era, it was special to watch. And I think we've struggled since I've been a Villa fan anyway. Maybe in the 90s when Brian was in charge and we won the Carling Cup or Coca-Cola Cup as it was back then. We haven't really had that dynamic, where goals are throughout the team and a special combination up front that linked up well, that has caused teams endless amounts of problems. So if Unai was watching, come on, it's a simple structure. Look what you can do.
What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts, Pete, on Ollie Watkins?
Well, Ollie's. I look back at when he first joined the club, and he always he reminded me a little bit of a few strikers that I've seen who'd get a lot of chances but didn't really take them. And it's only probably over the last few seasons that he's started to come into his own, really. He's scoring a lot of goals. So his percentage, as it were, at times was 3 and 4 to 1. And that seems to have come down now. I think he gets chances and he scores goals now. So he's done really well. But the difference is that when you look at who plays, there's not a combination, as it were. I think that managers play these different systems, about one striker and one sort of in the hole between. So it's a little bit different. Whereas, like I played up front, when people say to me, "Oh, who the strikers that you've played with?" I mean, I played with the likes of Trevor, playing for England, Trevor Francis, the likes of Tony Woodcock, the likes of Gary. So I've played in them combinations at quite a number of clubs. And we've always formed a good understanding in the teams that I've played. So, we had people in the team, as I said, who could score goals, but certainly when you've got two strikers who are scoring goals week in, week out, that's what you're sort of looking for. And the ironic thing is that if you look back, in the history, I scored 20 goals in 38 games when we won the championship. And it wasn't until probably Tammy Abraham scored 20 league goals. It wasn't in the first division, it was in the second division. But he did, it seemed to take forever. And if you haven't got strikers that are scoring 20 goals a season, then you're not going to win things. You're not going to achieve things. And that sadly is what sort of has been happening. And I think that Uri's done a tremendous job, at Aston Villa with the way that they've they've come forward and the way they've qualified.
Yeah.
And it was just a little bit disappointing the way it went, sort of last season. But, you know, he's built a great side. And as I say, when we were together, the team, 14 players had this bond, and we had this sort of, I think it come to a head when we lost to Everton. We lost to Everton at home. And I always remember going to the changing room. We're all sort of gutted that we've lost in that. And I always remember Ron Saunders saying, he said, you know, you've all thought that you're cock-a-hoop, and he was basically putting our feet on the ground. He was basically saying, you all think that you've done this and done that, and you've done nothing at this moment in time. You need to keep your feet in the ground. Okay? And then after that game, we went on a run that we wasn't defeated for quite a while. And I think that that's what resonated with all the players, is that, yeah, we haven't done nothing yet. Let's just get our feet back on the ground and just go and crack on and do what we do, and do what we do best is what we ended up doing.
100%. Because for me, Pete, I think consistency is key, right? So when you get that, and you can, like, those little moments in those defeats where you go, right, okay, we push on now, and we rectify those mistakes. And that, for me, with the current squad, while I completely agree, Unai's built something that, you know, I've dreamed of in the last 30 years. It's just now what we do to get to that next level of consistency. Because last season, I thought we were just that. We were a little bit inconsistent, and we finished really strongly, and we've ended up missing out on goal difference in the end. And I just think this season, surely we have to build on that, with one, being a little bit more clinical in the final third, because I think we've created chances in droves, but just not taken them, and then that's ended up pinning us back defensively, and we've ended up losing or drawing games that we really should have won, and we would have, you know. And so it feels to me like we're close to something great, but what is that missing chink in the armour? Do you know what I mean? What would you think?
Well, the chink in the armour is what I've just explained to you.
Yeah.
Gary Short and myself scored 39 goals.
Yeah, that's it.
Tony Morley got into double figures. Dennis Mortimer got into double figures. Gordon Collins got into so, you know, that's the difference, really, is that you need, you know, your strikers to score over at
38
least
games.
And we spoke about this previously. So the season before last, we had goals coming in from all over the team. We had Bailey, we had Diaby, we had
McGinn.
Douglas Luiz, we had McGinn, we had Watkins. Last season, I think, other than Rodgers, I think the highest scoring player in the team had 3 goals, other than Rodgers and Watkins. So they just weren't coming from other places. And I think you're right in that, and that's why there's been so much scrutiny on Ollie as well, because he's had to try and score, and if he misses those chances, no one else is going to score them. So I think that's been part of the problem. I just wanted to talk about your. So obviously, part of why you're coming on here as well is to talk about this whiskey venture that you're currently going on at the moment, the Spirit of Rotterdam 82. I wonder how you came up with that name. But if you could just talk us through a little bit, how's that come about, and tell us a bit more about it.
It's come about with Stephen, my son Stephen, who does. He looks after my affairs with regards to doing things in the UK, you know, like after dinners and Q&As and a lot of things like that. And it come about really with him pushing it with and coming up with the idea of the Spirit of 82. It was into conception probably because of the 40th anniversary. So it's been sort of on the back burner, as it were, trying to push it on. And I came back last year to do a promotion for it and to sign some shirts that we were going to push with this big promotion with it, which is what we've done. We've pushed, I think we signed something like, 200 shirts, which basically went in the package that you could buy a shirt signed. And it was originally going to be 4 of us. So there was going to be Nigel, Tony, Gary, and myself. And of course, with what happened with Gary, it was just unfortunate that we ended up pushing it to 3 players. So we've been pushing and promoting it. By the way, it is quite a nice tipple. Where on my travel back, I sample some. And the problem that I've got is everyone in Australia wants me to, come on, get the whiskey out, get the whiskey out. Unfortunately, I've got my bottles here. That's the problem we've got. So, but I'm back at the end of August, which I'm coming back. Funny enough, I arrived back on the 29th, and the idea was to go to the Crystal Palace game on my birthday, which is the 30th.
And I've just changed it, haven't I?
Steve just rang me now and told me that the game's been moved to the Friday.
Yeah.
So like, oh, okay then. So
Sky.
it won't happen on my birthday, but it'll happen on the Friday. So I arrive on the Friday at lunchtime.
Oh, wow.
And I'm just making sure that I get enough sleep, that I don't fall asleep when I go to the game.
Absolutely. Well, just on that, Peter, because I spoke to Stephen about this, and I think there is an event going on at the Whitton Arms that you're going to be part of for that game.
Yes.
So if we're going to plug that, there'll be a link in the description, by the way, guys, because that you can get tickets. I think £6 entry, and Pete will be there to, I think, doing a Q&A and various other things with memorabilia to be shown off as well, I believe. So make sure you check that out.
Yeah, we'll.
Yeah, so I've done a couple of things on. I've done a couple of things on Facebook, just explaining about doing the Whitton Arms and players being there and myself being there. What Stephen's plan is that some of my memorabilia is going to be on display there. So it's an opportunity for people to see the display. They're going to have it like as a separate room that you can maybe go in, and I think you've got to contribute something to go and have pictures taken and look at the memorabilia. But it's exciting. It's something that's being a stone throw away from Villa Park and just going into the Whit. Just seems to me, there's an opportunity for supporters to go in there and see, the likes of myself and other players.
100%.
That's amazing. We'll have more details on that, I think, soon once Steve's confirmed some stuff, and so we'll clarify that on here as well. I was just going to ask quickly. So you were saying, obviously, you were going to do this originally with the 4 of you, so including Gary Shaw. So are all the shirts, those 200 shirts, they include his signature as well?
No. We signed the shirts when I was home last. So we signed the shirts when I was back for Gary's funeral.
Okay, got you.
What we did was we had, I think it was about a week later, before I was coming back to Australia. That's what it was it was pushed out there. So we would, what we were doing is trying to sign the shirts and drink the whiskey. So it was like, damn that.
Rather than the other way, So you can tell if you got one of the later ones, right? Because it'll just be kind of like...
just a bit of a...
You'll get the scribbles.
So there is. I've seen the packaging, Peter, for the whiskey. It looks amazing. It's got like a fire oaked kind of burnt European trophy on the front, hasn't it? With the bottle, and there'll be a link in the description to the show, so you can go and check it out, guys, and still purchase a bottle if you want one. I'm just interested to know, are the club interested in kind of supporting you in it and kind of selling it, and could you get it at Villa Park? Have they got any plans of doing a tasting session maybe? Because I know plenty of people that would be up for that.
Well, to be perfectly honest, I think what's happening now with the Whit is that that's an opportunity that we could do it there.
Yeah.
I'm back, as I say, I'm back at the end of August, and I think we have got a promotion. I'm coming back for the promotion that we're doing. Where the promotion is, I don't know, but certainly once Stephen's got this tie-up with the Whitton, I think there's every opportunity that we can maybe go there and, promote it there as well. So
amazing.
And I think we're going it's open to whatever we want to do, or whatever Stephen's going to try and do.
Well, I think we're going to be lucky enough to be part of that, mate, when you come back on the 29th. So we'll hopefully get to meet you and kind of help promote that in any way that we can. I'm a massive whiskey fan. I spent a week in Islay about 5 years ago, going around 9 distilleries, learning the whole process of how whiskey's distilled, and come back a lot lighter in money, and a bit of an argument with my wife because I'd spent way too much money on bottles of whiskey. So yeah, I'm all for this. I said to Stephen, like, this is definitely right down my alley. So we'll help promote this on the show in any way that we can to get it kind of get it going, if anything. Do you know what I mean? So we're looking forward to be part of that. I don't know, James, I don't know about you, but what we'd like to do, we've got the video of the goal. I think I'd kill myself if we didn't have you talk us through this magical moment of 1982. Are you happy to do that if we get it up and kind of talk about the process of what went through your head?
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So obviously we've got the you started the move up actually just shortly before this here. So you play this in here. It's this movement here. You're just drifting.
Yeah.
You're drifting
so
forward.
It's funny because when this happens and Gary I play the ball and Gary goes and he does that magical turn.
Yeah.
At one stage I'm thinking to myself, where the hell is he going? He's going to the touchline. But then Tony makes this move. And if you notice here that I've always got this, I have this thing about taking centre halves to the near post.
Yeah.
And then pulling away. And as you can see there, I'm just totally free. Argentile's in front. If you can see there now, he's looking at the. What I used to do is that I used to make sure that centre halves were looking at the ball and not looking at me at the same time. And as you can see, his body movements, he's just facing the ball, and then I'm just lifting off now. And then Tony does a little jink. Goes one way, goes the other, and drives it across the box. And as you can see, I'm on my own.
Yeah. Now the big question is, Pete, did you shin it?
No, it was the Nike boot that went bump straight in there. What I was trying to do was, funnily enough, there's a story to this now, because that was the first season that we wore Nike boots. I went back to Portland for the 50th anniversary of the Portland Timbers. I've just come back now.
Yeah.
And I went round the Nike factory. Now, the Nike factory, when I went there in 1975, was about the size of my office. And then Phil Knight now owns, there's a town called Beaverton, or a city called Beaverton. He owns Beaverton. That's how big the thing is.
Wow.
So when I went back, I went to the Nike factory. So about 3 or 4 of us went there. And funnily enough, I should have kept the boot, because there's a display of memorabilia from when it started. And of course, yours truly was the first player to wear Nike boots in the UK.
Oh, wow.
So the promotion that he had, although we had 7 players in the team wore Nike boots, of course, the display that they've got of the first player to wear Nike boots, to play in a European Cup final, to score the winning goal, and they've got I've got the picture. In fact, I can't show you because it's on my wall here.
Yeah.
But I've got the picture of me in the net, holding the net.
Oh, I think Gary's got this. I think he's got it.
Highlighted.
We anticipated this, mate. Is this the one?
Yeah. So if you look now, you can see the 2 boots, which are the Nike boots.
Yeah.
I wore in the final. And they said to me, because a lot of them, because the shoes wasn't the best in the world at the time, what players were doing were buying other boots and put the swish in.
Wow.
So, but I I could wear any boots. It didn't matter what they were like. I could wear them. So, yeah, I actually wore the first Nike boots.
That's a
Oh,
what
wow,
a
that's
story
amazing.
that is.
I wish you would have got the money that they got
I
for.
was gonna say,
Yeah.
Where you're like, so basically you're the version of you're our very own Air Jordan, Pete.
Yeah, you are. Speaking of that,
with-
actually, because you were just saying you could basically play with any boots, etc. Me and Gary were talking the other day about, there's always the classic question of, the team now and the players now and the players then, and could they each play in each other's era and stuff. Like, what's your view on how the game's evolved? There's the technicalities, there's all the VAR, there's all the kind of song and dance and players going down if someone breathes on them. What's your kind of thoughts now on the modern game and how it's evolved? Do you think it's better, worse, just different?
It's certainly different. I think it's with some of the antics that happen on the football field, we wouldn't have stood for any of that. Someone would have went down because you've just touched them on the nose. It would have been, there would have been a few expletives telling them to get themselves. I think that people, and I've had this, not the argument, but I've had this with players of today, who said, "Oh, the game's too fast. You couldn't cope with the way the game is at this moment in time." And I used to say to them, I said to them, "You know what? There's good players adapt."
Yeah.
And if you tell me, and I'll show you footage, that George Best couldn't play on these football fields, that he used to run through mud, and it was mud. You watch footage of George Best dribbling past people. Do you think he couldn't do that in today's game? He could have done that. And it's the same with all of us. I mean, it's on Facebook at the moment. Someone has put this, the last home game of the season, which was Middlesbrough, which was the bogey team.
Yeah.
And everyone was telling me it was the bogey team of us. So, of course, when they sort of told me this at the changing room, they're all crapping themselves because we have to win the game. And I said to them, it's funny because I've never been in the losing side against Middlesbrough. I've always scored. So it raised the level of expectation. Everyone was saying, with you, he hasn't been in the losing team and so on. Anyway, so of course it goes to the game. And as I say, someone's put it on, the 3 goals that were scored against them. And the game was covered by Match of the Day, and John Motson covered the game. And I always remember I went to Wembley to watch. I think it might have been one of the League Cup finals, and John Motson was on my table.
Yeah.
And I said to John, do you remember the Middlesbrough game? And he went, do I remember that game? So he said, I couldn't believe it, he said. And I said, do you remember some of your commentary? So he said, I remember all my commentary. I said, there was an incident where they couldn't get out of their own half. We pinned them in. I hit the post. I had one cleared off. The goalkeeper pulled off a good save. And the guy who was marking me on the day, right, was a lad called Billy Ashcroft. Now, Billy could play centre half or centre forward, mostly centre forward. So they had a team meeting. This is what I was told. Tony McAndrew told me in this team meeting. He said, we had a team meeting. John Neal had the team meeting. So he said, if we've got any chance of winning this game, we have to stop Withe. If we can stop him, we've got a chance of winning the game. So we need someone who's going to stop him. So Billy Ashcroft, who come from the next village of mine, I come from Speke, he come from Garston, put his hand up and he said, I'll stop him. So he says, I'll mark him, I'll stop him. Anyway, Tony McAndrew, I've hit the post, had one cleared off the line, I'd had numerous chances. So Tony McAndrew goes up to Billy and he says to Billy, I've just got one question for you. He said, what's that? Are you ever going to get anywhere near him to stop him playing? So, of course, Stephen, my son's favourite goal, okay? So the first goal is scored because Colin Gibson hits a ball to the far post. And Alan Evans goes up and knocks it down to me. I back heel it. Someone gets a toe on it and it goes to Shorty, who bends it into the corner. So we're 1-0, 1-0 up. Go to the second half, we're going to the Holt end. Right? So Tony's on the ball, he's dribbling in the corner, plays it to Sid. Sid does a little bit of a jink, one thing and another, and checks back and passes it to Tony. Tony has a touch and he hits the ball to the far post. And as you said in the Bayern Munich, I've done my usual thing of gone like that as if I'm going to the near post. Yes. Billy's gone to the near post. I've peeled off to the far post. And I remember I practiced these things. I studied goalkeepers. I studied centre halves. So I used to practice this all the time at the training ground. And if you watch it, you know it's come off my head. And as it's come off, it's like a pass into the top corner. Yeah. And you see the goalkeeper doesn't move. He's just rooted to the spot as the ball's flew into the back of the net. As I've spun off to go into the Holt end, there's a ball boy behind that goal who's like this. He's like this. So, of course, I run past him, and then 10 years, I think it was 10 or 15 years later, he sends me a message. He said, I was that ball boy behind the goal.
Oh, wow.
So he said, can you sign my picture? And it's the picture of him behind the goal. Anyway, I scored that goal. And if you remember, I look back and I said to John Motson, he said, and John said to me, he said, you know what, that game could have been 10. He said, you created that many chances. It was unbelievable. And they couldn't get out their own half. They just couldn't. And of course, you know what's happened the following week. We're thinking to ourselves, we could have beat them 10-0, and they're playing Ipswich. And you play Ipswich the following week. Bosko Jankovic scores 2 goals and he beats Ipswich.
Football, it's a funny old game, someone once said. You know, it's crazy times, man. Okay, but so I think we've got brings on to the next part, which is basically one touch finish rounds, right? So we ask you a series of quick fire questions, right? And just I guess just tell us honestly what you think. So, excuse me, I was about to say that. I get a thing on my chest. So, quick fire question. Okay, so best player you ever played with?
Probably me.
Oh, that's a great answer. I love that.
Okay. I would say that the best player is, to be perfectly honest, there's been a lot. And I couldn't really isolate one of them and say, you know what, I played with, like I said to you, I played with partnerships up front. And they've all been tremendous. And I wouldn't like to, pick someone out and say he was the best, or I think that I've been fortunate enough to play with quite a number of players.
I've got a question.
I've really enjoyed.
I've got a question from the father-in-law, kind of related to that, maybe.
Yeah.
Woodcock or Gary Shaw?
Again, I wouldn't like to, because they were both. The reason being is that they were 2 different players. Yeah. Woodcock was very quick, fed off me. You could flick it on and he'd be running onto the ball. Both of us, which was ironic, both of us were left-footers. So it's very unusual to have two strikers as both left-footers. Nobody got a left and a right. Gary was a bit different. Gary played in front of me. Gary wasn't going to run over the top, because he didn't have the pace that Woodcock had. But both of them, we won the championship with both 2 teams. Won the championship with Nottingham Forest and won the championship. And if you look at the amount of goals that me and Woody scored and what Gary and myself scored, that was the springboard for winning things.
Yeah.
So, it would be very difficult to isolate them. I think that the 2 different type of players, but both score goals.
Okay, so we talked about your fantastic movement, which I just love, the movement to the near post, peel off at the back post, and you leaving defenders for dust. But who is the toughest defender that you faced then that kind of prevent you from making those runs, who work that out?
I would say that it's funny because I'd say that he was the toughest defender this week, but he wouldn't get the better of me the following week.
Yeah.
But I always remember playing against Dave Watson. So there's two Dave Watsons. There's one that played for Everton.
Yeah.
There's one that played for Sunderland and Manchester City. So the one who played for Sunderland and Manchester City, he learned me a lot. I split his eye open one day. I played against him and I cut his eye open. It wasn't malicious. It was just a clash between the both of us, and the blood was pouring down his face. So I looked at him and I went, Dave, you're bleeding there. And he just looked straight through me. Like,
oh, God. Yeah.
It was like he found himself in row Z.
Yeah.
So
amazing.
He was, people say about tough players. Tough players don't shout about it. Tough players just get on with it.
Yeah.
And he was from that school and just didn't complain. Just, if you kicked him, he'd kick you. He'd just get on with it. And he was sort of, I always remember that incident that stuck in my mind. And I've always had this thing about, and I say this to players, and I used to say it to Shorty as well. I said, don't stay down. I don't care how hard he kicks you. Don't stay down. Just get up. And my sons call it the Withe glare. So, once he kicked me and I got up and I just look at him,
Yeah.
Brilliant. I remember playing, it's funny, I played against Tottenham Hotspur. And the two centre-halves at Tottenham at the time was Graham Roberts. Remember Graham? Graham was a tough nut. And then the other one who played alongside him was, what's his bloody name? I'm trying to think of his name. They were two young ones. Oh. Anyway, I'll think of his name in a minute. You look it up and you find it. Anyway, the game's going on at Tottenham. We're playing at Villa Park. And he sidles up to me and he says to me, and we're watching, sort of, they're on the attack and we're looking sort of like this. And he says to me, how do you think it's going on? So I said, yeah, it was all right. Anyway, I turned like this to see where the ball's gone. And he goes like this and smashes me in the face with his elbow. So I'm going now backwards, but in my mind, I'm thinking, don't go down. Anyway, I roll over. I come back and I look at him and I went, so I start chasing him. And we're running around the pitch. And everyone's like, look, what the hell? And he's shouting, Graham, he's trying to get me, help. I'm thinking, if I get hold of you, I'm going to knock it.
Was it Paul Miller?
Paul Miller. Max Miller. That's his nickname.
Max Miller. There you go.
I always remember him, and I was thought to myself, you think I'm going to let you get away with that? Players are looking and thinking, what's going on?
That's brilliant.
They don't realise, because they didn't see it, and the linesman didn't see it. Because he gave it one of them, the sly look to the linesman, and sly look to the referee, and then smashing me.
I bet. You won't get that nowadays with VAR, would you?
Well, no, but the game misses that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? I
miss it.
The memories and the emotion that brings, it's brilliant. Okay, so next question, Pete. Villa Park as an atmosphere or Rotterdam in '82? Would you prefer?
No. You wouldn't take anything away from Villa Park. Villa Park, when it was rocking, it was rocking. Yeah. Rotterdam was a bit different because, it wasn't full. The stadium wasn't full at the time.
Yeah.
You've got them situations in them days where people couldn't afford to go to Rotterdam.
Yeah.
you know, I've got people who send me messages and says to me, you know, I would have loved to have gone to Rotterdam, but my mum wouldn't let me go because I was 6.
Amazing.
So, you know, it was you can't beat Villa Park.
Yeah,
You know, for the atmosphere and the whole end and
when it's going,
the way it was, you know, for all them. I mean, you look at that West Brom game.
Yeah.
When we played West Bromwich Albion, and you look at, I remember couldn't get to the stadium. We had to be at the stadium at a certain time, and I remember getting stuck in traffic and like thinking, I'm not going to make it. I'm going to get fined here because Ron's going to say, where have you been? I can't say, oh, I got stuck in traffic, because he would have just said, you should have set out earlier. It was only a police motorbike who pulled up, and I wound the window down, and he looked at me and he said, problem? And I said, yeah, I can't get the stadium. Follow me.
Amazing.
Followed the policeman to get to the stadium on time. But I mean, I think it was 48,000 in the stadium at that time for the West Brom game.
Well, it was before the days of health and safety, wasn't it? Where the whole end could be rammed. I mean, I remember my first game when I was kind of 5 or 6. It was all still standing then, and even then, the atmosphere compared to now was just so different. I mean, it's great now, but back then, like that memory for me, being stood in the whole end, like literally, you know, sardines in there. I mean, it just couldn't happen now. But that you can't express how awesome that was as a fan. So as a player, it must have been ridiculous.
Yeah, unbelievable. But
you remember the of course, Ron was the manager then.
Yeah.
And I spoke to him about it. I've spoken to him many a time, really, about the goal. You know, because as you know, it was one of them crucial games for us, and it was a night game.
Yeah.
And he said about Brendan Batson, and when I think about it, because I think to this day someone's got footage of it, and it just shows you me sort of looking at Brendan and thinking to myself, he's going to pass this back to the goalkeeper, you know. And of course, he makes the pass back to the goalkeeper, and now I'm on my way, and it's a race between the goalkeeper and me. And I get to the ball first and knock it in the goal, and I think it was quite late on in the game that scored the goal. And Ron to this day keeps saying to me, I told that Batson, whatever you do, just kick it in the stand. Too late.
I think that obviously I'm not old enough for some of those earlier days with like everyone crammed in the whole tent and stuff. But I think even thinking about games that one of the best atmospheres I remember up until recently was actually it was the Everton, our first game back in the Premier League after coming back up from the Championship about 5-6 years ago. That atmosphere was incredible, but actually I think it was topped. I'm assuming, were you at the PSG home game last season?
I went to the Bayern Munich game.
You went to the Bayern game.
The Bayern game was quite exciting, to be fair.
Yeah, that was quite amazing. But the PSG game, I think, just because of the way it went, and with John McGinn scoring that goal, and then it was I just turned to Gary and went, "We're going to do this. We're going to do this." And it was unbelievable. The atmosphere that night was absolutely ridiculous.
Well, if you remember, I've seen the interview that the manager made, who said in all the teams that they played, the toughest game that they ever had was against Aston Villa. They were the 2 toughest games that they had. The game that they had against Aston Villa. He said the way that they played, they've probably come the closest to beating us than any other team, you know. And that's a
hell of a compliment, considering how awesome they look at the moment. They're just, for me, like you talked, when you go back to your team in 81, 80 to 82, and you talk about that togetherness, that's what PSG seem to me at the moment. Like, across the pitch, no like superstars per se, but the work rate off the ball, the way they move the ball, how quickly they move the ball, like it is relentless. And I've never seen a side like it, if I'm honest, at Villa Park. It impressed me out of my absolute school.
What he's done is that he's got rid of all the superstars.
Yeah.
And he's worked the team that they all know what they've got to do in the team, and he's got a system that they play.
Yeah.
That they're all capable, of improvisation, as it were. And the boy Dembele just seems to score goals.
Absolutely.
And I think you only have to look at them playing Real Madrid yesterday.
Yeah.
I know it's the Club World Cup, and lots of people have said this morning that Real Madrid don't care about it or whatever, but it was meant against boys.
Yeah, they'll care about playing. It doesn't matter what competition you're playing in, or even if it's a friendly. If you're playing Real Madrid PSG, you want to win that game. You're not like not playing properly in that game.
But if you looked at how Madrid set up yesterday, I only saw the highlights, but they basically played 2 banks of 4 and said they were clearly scared. I haven't seen Real Madrid play that way ever.
Yeah.
Where they obviously feared PSG and kind of PSG just took them apart. It was absolutely unreal. But there you go.
One last question quickly for you, Pete, is if you had to take one player from the current squad and put it into your 82 team, who would it be and why?
Probably McGinn.
Yeah.
Probably McGinn, because I think that he could have fitted into our team.
It's alive.
I think that he's got a great work rate. He knows the importance of teamwork. He knows the importance of players around him. And I think that he could have been the 14th or 15th man, as it were, in that squad.
He's potentially linked. He's been linked with your
boyhood club,
your Everton, hasn't he? I don't think it'll happen, but yeah. I mean, I love McGinn, and I think a lot of Villa fans. It's not. I don't think it's that we're split. I think it's just a case of the starting 11 or your first 11, whatever you want to call it. I think a lot of people don't put him in it, but I'm just like, I think he gives us something that no one else in the team gives you: that heart, that drive, that engine, that absolute passion. He just grabs the team by the scruff of the neck and just goes, we're doing something here. And that PSG game again was a prime example of that. He literally just took it by the scruff of the neck and gave us hope. I've got goosebumps thinking about that game. It was incredible. Brilliant. Gary, any more from your side?
I think just one more from me, Pete. I think it's like that. So we asked about which one you'd take and bring into your squad. If you were in the current Villa squad, who would you most like to play alongside? Obviously not McGinn, but in terms of a striking point. Now front three, you've got Morgan Rogers, you've got Leon Bailey, you've got Jacob Ramsey, you had Rashford last season, Asensio. Who out of those would you like as your Gary Shaw, for instance?
Well, I think I could. I think really, I could make an improvement to Ollie Watkins. I think that if he played in front of me, he would be the Gary Shaw. But I think the difference with Ollie is that he's got a little bit of pace about him, so he could go beyond it. You know, so you wouldn't be just restricted to playing things in front of you. You could be, flicking balls on for him. And I think that what I tried to do with Gary was educate him about, what your role is in the team. I sort of, I look upon it as when, like Ron Saunders, the outlet for, was the left back. So teams against us, the outlet was the left back. So what he used to say to Gary and me, you have to cover that left back, stop him from getting forward.
Yeah.
But when you see in situations that Gary's on our right side and the left back's on that, and I pass him numerous times, running past him to cover the left back. So he'd say to me, I forgot. I said, Don't worry about it, I says, because I'm like the fittest one in the team. I'll go and do the running for there. You don't have to do the running. What you have to do is score a goal.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do.
Is there any chance, Pete, you're available to get on the coaching staff and just relay that kind of message to Ollie? That would be, I think, because for Ollie, for me this season, if we keep him, because obviously lots of speculation that he might be on the move, Man United, Arsenal, whatever. I hope he stays, because I think if he can add these little points to his game, I think there is a really good striker there. You know, like and if he could do that this season, that could be the difference from us winning something. And I think for me, that's got to be Emery's aim this year, 4th season, get a little bit of silverware, because it will ultimately give him legendary status.
I think, I look at, you do, I've always been a little bit of an educator. That's why I went into the coaching side of it and the management side of it, is because you can't beat playing. Don't get me wrong. You cannot beat playing. People say to me about coaching one thing and another. There's no comparison. You can't beat playing. Playing is the number one thing. But what you've got to realise is that, have you got something to pass on that you can't play anymore and you can't run around? Have you got something that you can pass on? And I always felt that I had something to pass on. And I always felt that in my playing days, I passed things on. To players, and to talking to players, and trying to educate them, because I always had to think about studying like goalkeepers, studying centre halves, studying positions of people, of where they go, and you sort of try and pass that knowledge on to players. And I always, there's little things that I used to do that I see, like a typical example is a throw-in.
Yeah.
So you see people taking throw-ins and battling with throw-ins and one thing and another. When I was playing, I used to say to like Kenny Swain and Gary Williams, if he was playing left back, or Gibbo playing left back, I used to always say to them, it's very simple when you get on the throw-in. Is I'm going to be standing there and I'm going to fake that I'm going to go to the left. You throw the ball to the right, because he's going to follow me, and the ball's going to, and I know where the ball's going to go. So I then pick the ball up and ping it to the other side. So I'd go from the right side, ping it out to Tony Morley on the left side, or it was the other way around. It'd be pinged out to, and people used to say, "But wouldn't he get tweaks to that? Wouldn't he tweak to it?" I said, well, I soon discovered that if he started to tweak to that, I'd be saying to them, I'm going to go that way, throw it that way.
Yeah.
So you just, there's little things like that you're saying to people.
100%. It's fascinating.
People always said to me about, I've never seen anyone chesting the ball like you. And I was saying, what do you mean? So he said, well, you pass the ball with your chest sometimes. So I said, well, yeah, you either control the ball or you see someone running, and the first thing you've got to do is pick up that run, chest the ball into the path, and things like that. Like Dennis, Dennis making midfield runs now, is that when the ball's coming to me and I'm facing here, I might be facing there, but I can see Dennis here. Because the one thing that I had I had good vision of seeing other things happening around me. So I might be looking at you, but I'm seeing what's going around here.
Yeah.
And when I used to pick the ball up sometimes, I knew Dennis would make a run, so I had to flick it inside or I'd control it. It happened, funnily enough, at Everton. And it happened at Liverpool.
Yeah.
We played Liverpool, and Dennis made this breakthrough run through the middle of the field, which is what he was renowned for. So it's them sort of things that it wasn't Ron Saunders who used to say that. It wasn't, and you were going to ask me a question about Tony Barton, is that it wasn't them that done that. It was the players that were on the field, the capabilities on the field, about helping one another and saying, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
So I think your question that you were going to ask me about Tony Barton was probably him taking over as. So he had to fill the boots of Ron Saunders, which is a daunting task anyway, to fill the boots of Ron with what he'd achieved. I've told this story many a time, but I'll tell you the story again. Is that my son was playing in a football game in Solihull, and I used to live in Knoll, and I would remember coming back, and I lived in a cul-de-sac, and I remember coming back, the kids in the car, and we were pulling up into our road. Now, if you don't live in our road, you wouldn't be coming into our road.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm pulling, and there's loads of cars. And I'm looking, I'm thinking, I says to Kathy, I says, it's amazing this, isn't it? One of our neighbours has got a party and they haven't invited us to the party. So I remember pulling on the driveway, right, to park the car. In the meantime, before this happened, in the morning at training, Ron Saunders has gone down, literally gone down in the training field. They had to send for the physio. And he had to get. So he was really bad. So they took him in, and I remember him driving out of the training ground. And so, of course, you know, it happens that he played in the football game. I pull in the car into my driveway. All of a sudden, these lights appear from nowhere. I'm thinking, what's going on here? And there must have been about, I don't know, two or three camera crews, but loads of reporters had found out where I lived. So the first thing that puts a microphone in front of me, and he said, what do you think of the news? So the first thing that's coming in my head is that I've seen Ron Saunders on his oranges down the front.
God, yeah.
I'm thinking, Jesus.
Yes.
So I said, what do you mean? So he says, Ron Saunders resigning from his job. And I went, oh, thank Christ for that.
Amazing.
So all of a sudden they think they've got a story now.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a story.
Wow,
in itself.
Withe and Saunders, what was it?
So of course they sort of trying to, and then once they've said what they've said, Ron lives around the corner from where I'm from, you know, from where I'm living.
Oh, okay.
So I says to Kathy, go in with the boys, I won't be long. So I said, look, I'm not doing an interview, so I back my car up, drive straight to Ron's house.
Yeah. Knock
on the door and say, you know, what's going on? The reporters around at my house saying that you've resigned. He said, yeah, I've resigned. I went, why? You know, we're in the quarterfinals of the FA, the European Cup. Why have you resigned? So he said, oh, they won't let me manage, you know. And he's a stickler. He's like Brian Clough.
Yeah.
You know, these like, you know, I managed the team. And he just said, you know, unfortunately, they won't let me manage. And I'm not talking about managing the team. I'm talking about managing the club, basically.
Yeah.
So he just said the time my hands, and I thought, and then I thought, you know, who's going to take over? That's our biggest thought, is that we're thinking to ourselves, if they bring in, say, a Ron Atkinson or someone, they're going to want to stamp their authority. Whereas when they announced that Tony was going to take over, we all thought, well, you know what, that's a great move, really, because he knows us all.
Yeah.
He knows our capabilities. He's been sort of number two. He stepped up to the plate. He just got on with it and just done exactly the same as what Ron was doing. Yeah. He just carried on with what he'd seen was happening. He just carried on with that. And the one thing that he knew that he had is what we talked about, is that the spine of the team. So he had players in the team that he could rely on. He didn't just have Dennis Mortimer as the captain. Mm-hmm. He had Ken McNaught, he had Dennis, he had me. So through the centre of the field, he had, you know, like the Jimmy Rinners. So he had the players that were far capable of carrying the thing forward on the field and all he had to do was make sure that he'd done his job off the field.
Yeah, and the rest is history. Amazing,
well,
brilliant.
Pete,
go on, Gary.
Go on, Joe. I just wanted to say it's been an absolute honour listening to all these stories. Like for me, probably more so than James. I'm a little bit older than James. Like I said at the start, you're the reason I became a Villa fan. So to hear it from your perspective, all that is a dream come true for me, and I'm absolutely honoured that you've been on today. We're massively grateful. Again, I just wanted to give a shout out for the whiskey. We'll put a link in our bio so people can click and kind of go and look and explore that for themselves. And the Wit and Arm stuff, which I know is going to be important going forward, because I know your son's kind of sorting things out there. So for everyone that's watching and has stayed on for an hour and 10 minutes, I'm sure you all have, because it's been super fascinating. Make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you go and follow the links. And yeah, thanks a lot, Pete, for being on. James?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Pete. And for everyone else as well. Obviously, we've still got the donation competition going on as well. So to win the signed ball, some of the memorabilia that obviously Peter has signed himself, and also Brian Little signed. Donate to Acorns. All proceeds go to Acorns, and that will give you an entry. Yeah, that will be an entry into the competition. But yes, thank you again so much for your time, Pete. Do stay on for 2 minutes at the end, because this doesn't close off. So we will say all our thanks to you then as well. Thanks to everyone for watching. Gary, you going to sing us out, mate?
I'm going to have to. I'm sorry about this, Pete, but it's the thing that I do. Every week we follow the boys in Claret and Blue.
Cheers.
Peace and love.